Hello everyone, Hyper here, and in today's video I will teach you how to play the Subtlety rogue for BFA's patch 8.0. In this guide I will go over talent builds, stats, rotation, enchants, and gems. A video dedicated to Azeroth gear and trinkets will be available the week Heroic Uldir releases. The first and arguably most important topic of this video is where can you get my weak auras and or UI? I get this question a lot, so make sure you check the pinned comments, and you can also just search for my BFA UI guide that I released on my channel a few weeks before BFA was actually launched. Moving on to the actual guide, let's take a look at the talents, and we will use a separate build for single target and for AoE. So starting off with single target, in tier 1 we will take Find Weakness, tier 2 Shadow Focus, then in tier 3 we take Marked for Death. This talent is kind of counterintuitive because as Outlaw for example, for AoE, you're probably better off with Marked for Death if you can get resets. However, as sub, this is the opposite. On AoE, we already generate enough combo points, so we don't need even more combo point generation. Rather, we want to be able to accumulate more combo points, and that is why on AoE we will take a different talent. So for single target, again, we stick with Marked for Death. Then in tier 4, this is an optional row, but I suggest going with Cheat Death for dungeons and raiding, and Soothing Darkness for questing. Tier 5 again is an optional row, but I suggest using Prey on the Weak, because this overall will actually increase your damage in certain situations. And then in the last tier, we take Master of Shadows. For AoE, like I mentioned, there are two talents that we actually change up. In tier 1, we still take Find Weakness, tier 2 Shadow Focus, but in tier 3, we take Deeper Stratagem instead of Marked for Death. Because like I mentioned before, our limiting factor on AoE is not our combo point generation, rather how often we can actually get those eviscerates out and how much damage our spenders will actually end up doing. And since Mastery will be our top stat on AoE, combine that with Deeper Stratagem, our spender abilities like Secret Technique will do a ton of damage. Then in tier 4, I suggest taking Cheat Death, tier 5, Prey on the Weak, tier 6, Dark Shadows, and in tier 7, this is again where we go with a different talent, and we take Secret Technique. So this talent allows us to burst every 45 seconds, and especially in dungeons or on encounters where you know that ads are going to be spawning, you can time this ability very well to do a huge burst of AoE damage. Luckily for Sub-Rogue, the damage difference between the single target and the AoE builds is not very significant. So this means that you will not be sacrificing too much single target damage if you go with an AoE build, and vice versa, which makes Sub-Rogue really good both in dungeons and in raids. Moving on to stats, our stat priority again, just like our talents, will change based on single target and AoE. For single target, I recommend going with Critical Strike over Haste, over Versatility, over Mastery. And this can be a little bit misleading because you assume that crit is the best and haste is much below that. But those two stats are kind of close to each other, so you might want to sim your own character and see which one is actually your top stat. For AoE, Mastery will be our best stat by far because it increases the damage of our spenders. And on AoE situations where we have an abundance of combo points, most of our damage will be coming from either Eviscerate or Secret Technique. So this means that those two are spenders, and since Mastery buffs it, it is by far the best stat. Then the second one is Critical Strike, third one is Versatility, and then our lowest stat for AoE is Haste. Moving on to the opener, and here I will show you the opener with Marked for Death. But if you choose to go with the AoE build, your opener will be essentially the same, but you won't have Marked for Death available. And instead of sometimes only having to Shadow Strike once, you will always get to Shadow Strike twice before using a spender. You will see exactly what I mean by that once I go through the opener. The first ability you will cast is Marked for Death, which you will try to do 30 seconds before the pull. And I understand that this is not always possible because sometimes maybe your raid leader doesn't want to do a 30-second timer, or if you're in a dungeon for example, your tank is not just going to wait 30 seconds for you. But I just suggest using Marked for Death as early as possible, up to 30 seconds before the pull. This is because if you use it 30 seconds before the pull, you will be at 3 combo points when the fight starts. So with your first Shadow Strike, you will instantly cap on combo points. So when the pull timer gets to 1 second, you will want to Shadow Blades and pre-pot. And then on the pull, you will open with Shadow Strike, and then your very next global will be Nightblade. Then you will move into your burst, where you will use Symbols of Death along with Shadow Dance and Shadow Strike all together. Since none of them except for Shadow Strike have a global cooldown, you can just macro all of these together, which I will discuss a little bit later. You will want to keep Shadow Striking until you will get to 4 or more combo points. Sometimes, depending on procs, this means that the global cooldown you press with your burst, you will already be at 4. Other times, you will have to press a second Shadow Strike. After this, you will Eviscerate or Secret Technique if you have it talented. And then again, you will Shadow Strike until 4 or above combo points, and you will Eviscerate. After which, you will use your Mark for Death along with Eviscerate. After this, you will move into your second Shadow Dance, which you should have macroed together with Shadow Strike. And you will just use it until you're at 4 or more combo points again, and then you finish with an Eviscerate, and again Shadow Strike until 4 or more combo points and finish with an Eviscerate. And after this, you kind of move into your conservation phase. Our spell priority is as follows. Our highest priority is always using Shadow Blades on cooldown, because this increases our combo point generation. The second highest priority is maintaining Nightblade on your target. The refresh time will depend on how many combo points were used on the previous cast, but you're safe if you always refresh below 4 seconds if you always use at least 4 combo points on your Nightblades. The third highest priority is using Symbols of Death together with Shadow Dance on cooldown. Typically, you will want to be above 50 energy when activating Symbols of Death. This is because you want to have some energy pooled so that you don't have energy starvation problems throughout your burst, and I will talk a little bit more in detail about this later. Our next priority is always using Secret Technique inside your Symbol and Shadow Dance window. And then you always want to use Mark for Death whenever you have it available, and typically I try to use this outside of my Shadow Dance windows. Our next priority is using Vanish along with Shadow Strike to refresh Find Weakness on our target when needed. And then your lowest spender priority will be Eviscerating at 4 or above combo points. On AoE, the way we build combo points changes slightly. Instead of building combo points with Backstab, you will want to use Shuriken Storm outside of Shadow Dance when you have 2 or more targets. And if you have 3 or more targets, you will use Shuriken Storm even inside of Shadow Dance. For optimal AoE and cleaving, you will want to apply Nightblade to important targets. And again, you will kind of want to estimate how long these targets will live. For example, if a target will only live about 10 seconds, you will not want to apply a full combo point Nightblade to it. It's enough to apply just 2 or 3 combo points. Then the rest of your combo points will just simply be spent on Eviscerates. So you will spam out those Shuriken Storms and Eviscerate whenever you get to 4 or more combo points. Now that we talked about the rotation, let's talk about energy pooling and how it relates to Shadow Dance. Because of the way sub-rogue damage functions, you will go through 3 alternating phases. First will be your burst phase, where you will be using symbols with Shadow Dance to pump out as much damage as you can. After these buffs expire, you will go into a conservation phase, where your damage will be pretty low, and here you pretty much just want to maintain your dot on the target and spend any extra combo points you have on Eviscerates. And the main thing here is preparing for your next burst phase, which happens every 30 seconds. Shortly before your Symbols of Death is off cooldown, you will want to spend your combo points and start pooling your energy, because you want to be at least at 50 energy when entering Shadow Dance. It is very important to pool this before your burst window, otherwise you will be energy starved during it and it will significantly lower your damage. Since Rogue has a 1 second locked global cooldown and Shadow Dance lasts exactly 5 seconds, this means that we can get exactly 5 global cooldowns inside our Shadow Dance. But if you have to wait even half a second because you ran out of energy, then you will obviously slip out of that Shadow Dance window and you will miss one of your globals, which is very easy and happens actually quite often. Another mechanic that is pretty unique to Sub-Rogue is combo point fishing. Due to our Shadow Technique passive, we sometimes gain extra combo points and energy. While you're in your conservation phase of your rotation, you can make pretty good use of this passive. Oftentimes you will reach 4 combo points and then you can simply sit there auto-attacking until you get 5, or you reach about 60 energy, in which case you can simply continue with your rotation. Fishing for combo points will also passively force you to pool your resources, which means that whenever your burst phase does come up, you're basically guaranteed to have the energy required to go straight into that Symbols of Death burst window. I haven't talked about macros in any of my other guides, but I feel that as a sub-rogue, there are a few macros which actually increase your DPS, and not using them is actually detrimental. The first macro is quite simple and is simply a Vanish and Shadow Strike combined macro. Like I mentioned in the rotation section, there will be times where you will want to use these two abilities together to refresh, find weakness on your target. And since Vanish is not on the global cooldown, you can just macro it together with Shadow Strike, and they will both get used on the same exact global. The second macro, which arguably is the most important one, combines Symbols of Death, Shadow Dance, and Shadow Strike. So Symbols of Death and Shadow Dance do not incur a global cooldown, but Shadow Strike does. This means that you can press all three of them at the same time. And if you don't have these three macro together, it is very unlikely that you will get the perfect timing of pressing three separate keys on your keyboard at the same exact time. And to this macro, you can also add a /use13 and /use14 line, which will just pop your trinkets if you have any unused trinkets. The third and fourth macro are for Shadow Dance. You will run into situations, and this happens more often in dungeons than it does in raids, that you might want to pop a Shadow Dance, but maybe you want to hold on to your Symbols of Death. So here you will just use Shadow Dance together with Shadow Strike, or Shadow Dance together with Shuriken Storm for AoE. Moving on to the last section of this guide, we have Enchants and Gems, and these will kind of vary depending on if you're statting for single target or for AoE. For single target, on your main hand weapon you will want to enchant Deadly Navigation, and on your offhand you will want Quick Navigation. However, for AoE you will want Masterful Navigation on your main hand, and Deadly Navigation on your offhand. Then on your ring, you will want Pact of Critical Strike for single target and Mastery for AoE. So you can probably see the pattern here, you will just enchant or gem your top stat. For gems, you will want to have one Agility gem, and then the rest you will go with Deadly Ember Blaze for single target, or Masterful Tidal Amethyst for AoE. Thank you so much for watching my Battle for Azeroth sub-rogue guide, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section and I will try to help you out as soon as I can. If you'd like to support this channel directly, make sure to check out my Patreon, where you will get perks such as gaining access to my written guides, early access to my videos, or joining my Discord. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.